Something I've learned throughout my journey to becoming a more confident communicator is that there were things that I did unknowingly that revealed I was not a confident speaker. These are things that would crop up in social conversations, in family conversations, and in business conversations as well. Now, I wouldn't do these things all of the time because it did depend on who I was with and how comfortable I was with that person. But whenever they did crop up, it immediately made me look like I lacked confidence in that moment. And through my work with various coaching clients, I quickly understood that there are many other people who incorporate these bad habits into their communication as well. So I thought it would be a fantastic idea to create a video around this topic to help you understand what these bad habits are and also to help you avoid them. But before we get into the habits, if you really want to make true and lasting changes to your communication, you first need to understand why you use these bad habits in the first place. Why do you communicate in such an unconfident way? Because when you understand the why, it is much easier for you to overcome these bad habits and to replace them with something that will help you look and sound a lot more confident when you speak. Sometimes it's because you grew up in a family environment that did not support you being a confident communicator. It could have been full of people who were more dominant communicators. It could be your family, it could be your friends, it could even be your spouse. Basically, these are people who would constantly cut you off. They would talk over you. They would tell you were wrong. They wouldn't listen to your opinions. They would try to belittle you in any way that they could to squeeze you into the little box that they wanted you to stay in and hope that you and your thoughts would actually stay there. And if this happened many times over a number of years, you would have learned that whenever you try to communicate confidently, you are met with resistance. So you would have stopped trying to communicate confidently and you would have given your communication power over to the other people. Another reason you may not communicate in a confident way is because you're unsure of the content you are talking about. This is a much easier fix than the previous reason I just told you about. But if you are unsure of your content, you might do things like start a sentence and hope that someone else in the room who knows the content better than you will actually finish that sentence for you. You may over-explain, use long sentences instead of using sentences that explain things in a simple, clear, and succinct way. Or you may look to others in the room for approval to make sure that you're on the right track. The fix to this is to know your content well before you go and speak about it. So what I recommend you do is to prepare your thoughts in advance. Take out a piece of paper, write down some bullet point notes of what you want to talk about, some key points of what you want to say before you actually go into that communication opportunity. Now you have a couple of reasons as to why you may not speak in a confident way. Let's look at the mistakes that reveal you are not a confident communicator. Not finishing your sentences is really common with people who lack confidence when they communicate. And it would play out like this. You would start a sentence and then towards the end of that sentence, you would trail off. You wouldn't finish that sentence. You would hope that someone else around you or in the room would pick up on your thought, would understand what you want to say, and would actually finish that sentence for you. This immediately indicates to the people you're talking with that you're unsure of what you're saying. And if you're unsure of what you're saying, it's usually because you don't have confidence in your knowledge or you don't have confidence in yourself. So the way to fix this is to make a conscious effort to finish your sentences whenever you're in a conversation. Try not to let people cut you off. Try not to let people talk over you either. And if you do lack knowledge in what you're talking about, then like I mentioned before, spend some time learning your content and understanding what you're talking about before you go and talk to other people about it. Looking to others for approval when you're speaking or when you're making a decision is another mistake that will instantly reveal you're not a confident communicator. Now, this can quite often come across by you asking the question, do you think we should? When you have an idea about something you would like to do, but you feel you need to ask the other person for approval before you actually go ahead and do it. Without realizing what you're doing here is you're giving away your decision-making power to the other person. This is everybody's right. Everybody has the right to make their own decisions, and you're simply giving it away because you don't have the confidence within yourself to make your own decisions on your own. So the next time you are faced with a decision and you're tempted to say, do you think we should? I encourage you to stop and instead say, let's. For example, let's eat Chinese for lunch or let's go to the movies. This is a much more confident way of proposing something to somebody, of making a decision. And it's also an open way because you still allow that other person to contribute their suggestions as well. Now, some of you watching may be guilty of over-explaining yourself when you communicate. This might mean that you give lengthy answers to questions that people ask you, or you might go into way too much detail when you're actually making a decision. Confident communication is short and succinct. So every time you over-explain or every time you give lengthy answers, you reveal a lack of confidence in yourself. Now, there is a time and place for giving those lengthy answers and complicated answers, but you have to understand when it's required. For example, in business, if you're trying to explain a complicated topic, or if you are making a difficult decision, then you'll need more time to explain to the other people listening to you why you're making that decision or what that complicated topic is about. So you really need to understand the time and place for when lengthy answers is required. But for the most part, when you want to sound confident when you speak, a short, succinct, and clear response is best. Now, this one is a common mistake that instantly reveals a lack of confidence. And this is where you apologize for every little thing, even for things that you don't actually need to be sorry about. For example, let's say you're on a Zoom call with a colleague and the connection is bad, they can't hear you properly. You apologize to that person for the connection being bad, even though it isn't your fault. So this might feel like the courteous thing to do, right? But listen to what happens when you replace apologizing with being grateful. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, this is a bad connection we have here, you could replace it with, thank you for being so patient despite this bad connection. Do you see how much more confident this makes you sound? Downplaying your achievements is another mistake that will instantly make you look like you lack confidence in yourself. Now, this often plays out by you not talking about your achievements at all, or if you do talk about your achievements, you minimize them in a way that they don't seem significant or important at all. You might think you're being humble when you do this, or polite, or maybe you don't want the other person to feel bad about themselves, therefore you don't talk about your achievements. But what really happens when you downplay your achievements or completely erase them is that it makes you look like you are not a confident person. So whenever you have an opportunity to talk about your achievements, I encourage you to do it in a confident way. And if you're unsure of how to do this in a confident way, what to say when you talk about your achievements to sound confident but not to sound egotistical, then I encourage you to watch this video up here because that will definitely help you out. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it really helpful. If you want to continue with your journey on becoming a more confident communicator, then I encourage you to check out my online course called Assertive Communication Skills Masterclass. This is currently available on Udemy, so I will put the link for that in the description below. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next week in another video.